And honestly, at some place, your passive income surpasses your active income, right? And it's like, well, now there's just a lot of money coming in, right? This is the whole advantage to getting old is you can put out so much more income, and a lot of it you're not trading your time for anymore. And this is really what we're trying to get to, is that place of financial freedom, that place of opportunity to be able to choose what to do with your time, choose how to be generous, choose when to work and when not to work, right? But this is the path. It's simply these 8 steps.
Welcome back to another episode of The Donkey and the Bee with your hosts, Barrett and Laura Shakavis, where we talk all things marriage, entrepreneurship, and finances. And today we are talking finances.
That's right. Talking about your steps to financial freedom. How do you get a plan together? What steps do you need to hit financial freedom? So I want to first set the stage with what is financial freedom, right? How do you define this thing? And there's a bunch of different definitions out there, so I want to give you something as simple as possible. And I would define it in this way. Financial freedom is the ability to live indefinitely without needing more active income, right? So what I would say to kind of unpack that even more is how do you create income that comes in every single month that you're not trading your time for? And once that passive income has exceeded your monthly spend, right? If you bring in $6,000 a month of passive income and your expenses are less than $6,000 a month, then you can legitimately work, or not work, I should say, forever, for the rest of your life, as long as you don't increase your expenses more than your passive income.
So to break this down a little further, if we have some new listeners who don't quite understand what active and passive income is, can you describe the difference between those two?
I think it comes back to your time. You are trading your time for money. That's active, right? That's your active job. If you're an employee, if you have a business and you're actually working in it. If you have passive investments like real estate or stocks, or perhaps you own a company that you've hired a CEO for and you really don't do anything anymore. All of those things are passive in nature, where money comes in, you're not trading your time for it. You had already traded your time in the past, and you took that money and bought something. You bought an asset. An asset produces income on a certain regular basis, whether it's monthly or yearly. If you have that money come in without trading time anymore, that's now passive. Okay, so here is how we get a plan together. And I'm gonna go through 8 different steps on what your plan is. And it may take 5 years to get through the whole plan to get to financial freedom, or it may take 20 years. It really depends on what plan you're gonna create. So that's really where you start, is getting on the same page. Whether you're doing it with your spouse, you guys need to come together and say, what is our line in the sand? What is our financial freedom number? And I would say it's this. It needs to be just higher than what are your active expenses now. If you're spending $5,000 a month to live, $60,000 a year, right? Maybe that's your number. How do you get $5,000 a month in passive income? And now that is your goal. You're gonna spend the next 8 steps, whether it's 5 years or 10 years or 20 years, how do I get to that $5,000 a month? And perhaps it's a moving number, but as you are creating assets, that usually exceeds inflation, right? If you have rents and things, it's usually both of these things are working together. Your income is moving up and your expenses are moving up, so you're roughly fine. So your first step is creating your budget. And I think of this whole thing in kind of this football analogy. You have a defensive team, you have an offensive team, and you have special teams. So your budgeting is your defense, right? It's protecting your money. That's defense. And so you start by literally going through and itemizing, here is my expenses. I would get one of those apps, and some are free, some are paid, and go through what's the last 3 months or 6 months. And a lot of these apps will do it for you. You don't have to do it manually. And then put things into categories, right? These are hard expenses I have to pay, right? Here's my insurance and my mortgage and things like that. Here's my kind of like wants, and here's my needs, right? Go through and put it into different categories and know where you're starting at. There's a term like every dollar has a name. I would put it into these categories, and every single dollar that you make has a name for it. And then you can kind of say, hey, you know what? These categories over here, this is fluff. Like, we are wasting money. It's kind of knowing where to start.
I think when people hear the word budget, they automatically think negative, right? Like, I don't want to budget. That's like, a prisoner. Like, I'm chaining myself to my money. And I think the opposite. I think, I love the term discipline equals freedom. And I think that's really what it is here. You're having discipline within your finances so that, or in an effort to get to financial freedom, which is not like shackling, right? I think most people are shackled to their own finances that aren't enough, and they're shackled to their own mindset that is pretty much inhibiting them from pursuing or even getting to that financial freedom. So I want people to think of it as it's freedom. Discipline in your finances will eventually lead to your freedom. So when we first did this budget, it was hard to talk about. It was uncomfortable. We saw how much we were spending on certain things, and it got uncomfortable, and we had to talk about it, with grocery spending and, spending on utilities and our rent, and also just like fun money, right? Like the things that you want to buy, clothes, go see the movies, whatever it is. And we had to really cut back on a lot of these things. And actually, it was hard. It was something that was hard, but it was something that I think every family needs to do in order to get to that financial freedom goal. So the second step in financial freedom is decreasing your expenses by 20%. And that's pretty much what we just talked about within a budget. But I think once you do the budget, you then can come together as a couple or as a husband and wife and determine, okay, what can we cut? Because there's always fat that can be trimmed. I know some people are like, well, I budget and I just can't do anything, else. And then I look at their nails and I see their nails are done. I'm like, well, that's one thing you can cut out. You don't have to get your nails done. Oh, but I have to get my nails done. That's my one thing. It's like, well, look, your eyebrows and your eyelashes are done. That's another thing you can cut out. And so there's these things that I think that we allow in our minds, like, oh no, that's okay. I deserve this. I should do this. Those things can be cut. Netflix can be cut. You don't need that. I think it's determining what you need versus what you want. And I think a lot of people say that their wants are needs when your wants aren't really needs. And so we came together as a couple and decided what we can cut out of our budget. And that was 20%. We cut 20% out. And that was a lot of the excess spending, a lot of things that we did not need that we just wanted.
So this step, I think, is the hardest of it because like you're trying to build momentum. You're just getting started. Can I do this? And it's like, this step sucks, right? Yeah. Like the defensive team, this sucks. But it's not forever. You build the budget, you cut the 20%, and then you maintain. And then we're going to spend most of the time focusing on the more fun stuff, making more money, investing more money. That's the stuff that you get excited about. But you have to start with your defense because if you don't have the extra money in the budget, then you can't do anything with it, right? Mm-hmm. So that's really the goal. How do I get an extra 20% in my budget and just suck it up? It's going to be 5 or 10 years. It is what it is, right? But is your goal, is financial freedom, is getting on the same page for this common thing? What are you going to do when you hit early retirement with your spouse? Like, is it big enough and important enough for you to sacrifice this time? Okay, so step 3 is increasing your income by 20%. So we just talked about decreasing expenses by 20%. Now we're talking about increasing income by 20%. There is a net gap of 40% there. And you may think, well, that's too much. Everyone else says do it by 15%. Those people are wimps. Those people suck. They are not getting to financial freedom. 15%, 10%, honestly, is not going to get you anywhere in this life. 40%, the richest people in the world save and invest at least 40% of your income. So this is your plan. If you're making a certain dollar amount now, you add 20% in by cutting it, and then you add another 20% in by increasing your income. This is where it starts to get fun. This is where you can talk about how do I grow my income by getting promotions, by taking on another role in my current job that is kind of in sequence with what I'm already doing. How do I add more value to the company and maybe take on one other position where, I was already doing most of that anyways. Can I get some type of stipend or raise or something to do this other thing that's kind of very similar? Or perhaps you got to get in a side hustle, right? If you're dog walking or if you're doing people's taxes or their hair on the weekends, like there are so many different things you can do, but do something that it's not making your same hourly wage, right? If you're going to commit to, hey, here's my Saturday, right? 8 hours a week, make 3 times, make twice as much as you would make hourly, right? If you make $25 an hour, then do something that at least gives you $50 an hour, right? Something like $400 a day. But don't just go get another job at Starbucks at another $15 or $17 an hour. That's not what we're talking about. increase your income. You only have a little bit of extra time in the week, so make it super productive, right? You can't scale that at 40 hours a week at $50 an hour maybe, or $100 an hour, but you could probably get to 4 to 8 hours a week doing this one thing one time a week.
It reminds me of Gary V. Gary Vaynerchuk talks about when he first started in having a job and he needed a side gig. He would go, and it's called something. He would
Garage
go to
selling?
Is that garage selling? Is that really a thing? Okay. He would go to garage selling. So he'd go to these garage sales, and he'd probably go to like 20 in one day, and he would pick. He would, pick certain things that he thinks, oh, I can maybe refurbish that, or maybe not even refurbish it, just take it and resell it on eBay. So he would take all these products, take pictures of them, and then he'd post them on eBay, and he would be making so much money just from doing that. So I think you need to really think outside the box here. You, like Brett said, you don't get a second job where you're working, an extra 40 hours a week, making the same hourly. We're talking about something that you can maybe do on a Saturday and a Sunday, or maybe just a Saturday, and taking maybe 4 or 5 hours of your time. There's so much opportunity out there right now with social media to do certain things like this. It's just taking the time and effort to get it done and do it. So the fourth step is paying off bad debts. And so I think I want to distinguish between what a bad debt is and what a good debt is. A good debt is an asset, is something that's making you money. A bad debt is something that is taking away money. It is not bringing in an income, it's taking it away. So that's a bad debt. So for example, I think the first thing people think about when they think of bad debt is they think of credit card. So pay off all those credit card debts, because those are at least 18 to 22% that you're paying extra on top of that. So paying off those debts, there could be student loan debts that you also have. There could also be an excessive car that you may have. Maybe it's that $80,000 truck that you have, and it's $800 to $1,000 payment each month. That's a bad debt. You can sell that car and then actually pay off those student loans and those credit cards that you may have. So step 4, pay off all the bad debts that you have.
So there's plenty of good debts. We have lots of debt and no bad debt, but all debt against assets, something that makes you money. This is a tool, debt is a tool to help you make more money. If you can buy something and not use 100% of your money, use bank money on 80% of that, then you can purchase something that cash flows. And if you can have a $1,000 a month mortgage payment and $1,500 a month of income from rents, that's a good thing, right? Mm-hmm. Like, that's fine to have. So don't be debt free, just be bad debt free. So step number 5 is saving to a sacred account. And what a sacred account is a savings account that you don't get to touch. So I would say it is not at your normal bank. If you have a checking account at your local bank, go get a savings account at a different bank, maybe a further bank away, maybe a small bank that's inconvenient to get to, where you don't even set up an app. You don't have checks on this thing. The whole premise is that you're going to have now an extra 40% of budget at the end of the month. And you're going to take that money and you're going to send it to this sacred account. And I would say this, and instead of waiting to the end of the month and hopefully you don't spend it, because you're going to spend it, you take that 40% at the beginning of the month or when you get your paycheck and you pay yourself first. Think of it from this perspective. The IRS, when they tax you, they don't wait for the end of the year and you send in what you owe, right? They actually take it first on every single paycheck. They don't trust you. For good reason, you're gonna spend it if you have it in your account. Mm-hmm. So you should take that same principle. Don't trust yourself. Pay yourself first by going and having this sacred account that you don't get to touch. It's not an emergency fund. This is your future self's money. This is what you're saving to buy assets with. And then at the beginning of the month or at the beginning of the paycheck, you can set an auto pay, you can do it automatically, but send that money there with the goal that you are letting that money build up. You are creating a big nest egg of income that you can next use that to purchase an asset.
So if you work for a company or for somebody else, there are probably options that you have with your employer to actually do this for you automatically. So we employ quite a few people, and we have an option for them to have a secondary bank account so that when they get paid, a certain percentage, however much they allot, goes to that second bank account. So we encourage our team members to have this other account so that it's automatic. I think when you leave it to your own way, a lot of times you won't put that extra money into this account, even in the beginning of the month, even when you have the money. So I think if it's just an automatic thing that gets done every paycheck, every time you get paid, and it's just automatic, it will happen, and you'll see that slow growth in that bank account, and that will increase your momentum to keep doing it because you're going to see it grow slowly.
So I would also add that you can use this money you're splitting off to collect and pay off your bad debts, right? As that previous step, use this split money, that 40%, pay off all the bad debts. When the bad debts are gone, then this account can fill up to purchase assets.
Well, step 6 is learn a niche to invest. And that is specifically so that you can purchase assets in that. And that can be real estate, which is what we do. That can be mutual funds. That can be the stock market. But I think what I suggest is that you invest in something that you know. And the only way you're going to know something is if you actually build your skill set and build your knowledge in that specific trade. So for us, we kind of jumped into real estate. We didn't know a dang thing about it. YouTube was very helpful. And so I think that there's really no excuse now for you to not know a niche or for you to not gain your knowledge on something specific, because there's so much. I mean, literally just pull this phone up. I mean, you got anything you want to learn on this phone. Through podcasts, through YouTube, through just reading books. There's so many avenues to expand your knowledge on these certain topics and these certain assets. And to be completely frank with you, we've been doing real estate for over a decade, and there's still so much I don't know. And so I think it's one of those things where you're probably never going to know everything about that specific topic, and that's okay. I think you just got to start somewhere.
So I think this makes sense as far as a time to be able to learn these niches, because the previous step is I got to pay off all my bad debt, right? So you are literally spending this time. That might be 3 months, 6 months, it might be 2 years. And you take that time where you're saving, you're splitting that 40%, you're paying off that bad debt, and you have all of these months or year to learn this niche. You can spend that money. You can use that actually to invest in yourself. Really, that is your first asset. Well, you can spend that money instead of buying an asset, you can buy a coach or buy a course or go to a workshop, right? Like use that towards this niche, learning these things. And I would say that there's active niches and there's more passive niches. So you talked about like mutual funds, right? You're not doing the work. You're not picking what stocks to buy, right? The company is. So you could put your money in that. And generally speaking, you will have a lower return, right? You may average about 6 or 8%, something to that effect. Where if you are actually investing yourself, whether it be in stocks or whether it be in real estate, you can make a much higher return, right? I mean, you could get 20%, you can get 100%, right? But you're going to be doing this yourself. It's going to take a lot of time. You're going to be actually running the deal. So decide what is best for you. There's not a right or wrong way, but just have a takeaway that if you're going to put in the work and the time, you're going to get there 2 to 5 times faster.
So step 7 is to buy an asset. And you probably say, how do I buy that asset? Well, it's with all the money that you have saved from all these previous steps. And so you're taking that money. While you are saving that money, you are then increasing your knowledge on something specific. Let it be mutual funds, real estate, watches, whatever it is that you're going to purchase for an asset. So you're building your knowledge on that specific topic. So you have the money, you have the knowledge. So then you actually have to take action. You have to buy something. And so that's purchasing an asset. It's putting that money into something that is going to be a passive investment for you.
So step number 8 is compound and repeat. And this is, I think, actually the hardest part. Once you buy your first asset, you've gone through like all this work and things like that. And you might find out like, I really hated that asset class. Like we started and we did mobile homes and it was like, man, I really despise this. This is terrible. And so instead of just quitting and going back to let's just spend all our money, like I'm trying to really shift and be like, okay, well, if I'm going to repeat, I need to actually learn a new niche, right? I actually didn't like that. And you may like it. And as you continue to grow, your repeat may not be the same asset class. It is very, very likely you're going to educate yourself, take a lot of action, get results, and then you're going to grow and you're going to do bigger deals, right? We went from mobile homes to flipping houses and then having rentals and then doing small multifamily into bigger commercial deals and then really big commercial deals. So it's very reasonable you're going to continue to grow yourself and repeat. Here is the challenge is a lot of times once you see these results, you have this money in there and you have new income coming in and you're like, man, but I worked so hard, right? Like I've been working hard for the last 2 years. I deserve a new car, right? Like, and you have this now income coming in from these deals. The whole plan is to compound interest, to repeat. And that actually gets challenging once you start getting results. So the whole point is you started with this plan of here is my number. I need to make this much money a month in passive income. Focus on that goal. And I think it is totally reasonable to give yourself rewards, but don't take all of that income and start going on vacations and things like that, because you'll be really tempted to do that. But I think it's pretty reasonable to say, hey, you know what? Let's take 10% of this compound interest money and let's spend it on ourselves. Let's go on a trip, or maybe we take some of this money and now we reinvest back in our education. And maybe it's 80 or 90% we're putting directly back into new assets to purchase. But I think this is the whole thing, right? How do you get to a place where you have this flywheel going, right? Where it's just building momentum and it's spinning off more and more money. You are now compounding the active income that you have with this passive income that continues to get bigger and bigger and bigger every year. And honestly, at some place, your passive income surpasses your active income, right? And it's like, well, now there's just a lot of money coming in, right? This is the whole advantage to getting old, is you can put out so much more income, and a lot of it you're not trading your time for anymore. And this is really what we're trying to get to, is that place of financial freedom, that place of opportunity to be able to choose what to do with your time, choose how to be generous, choose when to work and when not to work, right? But this is the path. It's simply these 8 steps.
Thanks again for joining us here on the Donkey and the Bee. We hope that this call was helpful for you, that it brings clarity to the steps you need to take to achieve financial freedom, that also freedom of choice, right? Freedom of time. If you know anybody who would like financial freedom or freedom of choice or freedom of time, which is majority of Americans or people in the world, please share this. That's our one ask, is just share this. We want as many people as possible to have access to this information so that they can achieve financial freedom for their family. Thanks again for joining us, and we will see you on the next one.